I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Dr. Otto Octavius.
Welcome to Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Arey, and we are so excited to tell you all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things that you might have missed in the second trailer for Spider-Man: No Way Home. Are you ready, Doug?
I am ready, person.
There is so much to unpack in this trailer. Returning villains, a new secret villain, and places where we think a Spider-Man or two has been digitally scrubbed from the frame.
Ever since I got bit by that spider, I've only had 1 week where my life has felt normal. That was when you found out.
Now, I love this as a way to establish the start of this trailer. Peter and MJ's relationship has never really been allowed to flourish on screen, and this movie is going to really show how much he relies on her to balance out his double identity. The next shot was from the last trailer, picking right up where Far From Home left off, just after Peter's identity was revealed to the world. Notice that the billboards show half Spider-Man, half Peter faces, the way he was sometimes drawn in the comics to show his double identity. Throughout the trailer, we see a few more shots from this sequence. He and MJ are being hounded by news helicopters on top of the Queensboro Bridge. Then they drop down into the subway to get away from the media, nearly getting hit by an M train, which, by the way, does run to Queens, where Peter's from. I don't know, could be me, but this feels like a sly nod to the classic Doc Ock train battle in Spider-Man 2, except that fight was Peter embracing his responsibilities, and right now we see another Peter running from his responsibilities. Then we see shots from the last trailer of Peter entering Strange's Sanctum Sanctorum, which for some reason is covered in snow. Maybe because he likes it that way for the holidays. When Strange botched the spell, notice these spinning rings. Now they begin kind of parallel and far apart, but then as it goes out of control, they start to cross over one another like different universes colliding, really similar to the look of the multiverse splitting apart at the end of Loki. In fact, there are 4 rings, perhaps meaning 4 different universes. There's the Raimi-verse, the Amazing-verse, the MCU, and the Sony-verse, featuring Venom and Morbius, maybe? Strange says,
"We started getting some visitors."
Now what's interesting is the question of why these villains are here. Why were they transported to the MCU? Well, Strange's spell was about Peter Parker and Spider-Man. It was all to make people forget that he was Spider-Man. So when the spell accidentally rippled out across the multiverse, it gathered together the people most obsessed with Peter Parker, his villains, especially since, as we learn later on, these villains were all nearly dead when they were lifted from their own universes. So, in their last thoughts, they're thinking of Spider-Man, seeking revenge, and that's why the Spider-Man spell attracted them to this universe. For instance, this bridge battle where Doc Ock meets Holland's Parker is staged over the Hudson River where he died. So it could be that he is emerging from the depths at the moment of his death in this new universe, but I don't think so. I have a theory about that. So this is the Goblin bomb shot from the last trailer, and then we see him, Willem frickin' Dafoe's ridiculous Power Rangers looking Green Goblin costume in all of his Raimi-esque glory. What a time to be alive. Wasn't that mind-blowing? Doug, what did you think of that?
I thought it was pretty cool, thank you.
Now, it's interesting that the Goblin and Doc Ock both appear on this bridge. So I'm going to jump around a bit in the trailer and throw out a theory. Is that okay?
That's cool with me, I'm just taking it all in.
So later in the trailer, we see that Doc Ock has augmented his arms with some kind of Stark-like nanotech. So if he just emerged from the river, then he wouldn't have access to this technology. So clearly, at some point before this fight, he and maybe the Green Goblin were doing some research on this universe, learning about Spider-Man, Tony Stark, and the events of the MCU. So the two of them could have worked together to steal some Stark tech. And who do we know who's great at stealing Stark tech? The Vulture. Even though he's not in this trailer, it could be that they spring Adrian Toomes from jail, and together they get their hands on some sweet, sweet, sweet Stark nanotech. Now, my favorite part of this trailer was...
Excuse me, person?
Yeah, Doug, what is it?
Is today Thanksgiving yet?
No, it's Thanksgiving, and no, it's not here yet.
Oh, well, you got any of that sweet, sweet turkey from the other day?
No, Doug, you've had enough turkey. The other day, I carved a whole chicken in the break room, and now Doug is hooked on fowl.
Oh, I need my medicine. Give Daddy a fix.
Actually, you know what, buddy? I think there were treats in the break room. Maybe you should go check that out.
All right, I'll go check that out. But you better have chicken next time I come in here.
So I carved the chicken to practice for Thanksgiving. I really want to make it special this year. I want a set of knives that are so well crafted they could have been made by Hattori Hanzo. So I'm using Kamikoto knives, the sponsor of this video. Each knife comes in a heavy-duty ashwood box to store it safely, and it just feels special when you open it. So when you carve your turkey, it'll slice through the meat like butter. And perfectly balanced, as all things should be. The knives are created by tapping into 800-year-old traditional Japanese techniques, such as swordsmithing, ironworking, and metal casting. Each blade is made of Japanese steel, using techniques that have been perfected by generations of knifesmiths. All of these knives have gone through a 19-step process that takes years to complete, and each set comes with a lifetime guarantee. I mean, no wonder these knives are used by chefs at Michelin star restaurants. So Kamikoto is offering viewers an extra $50 off any purchase with the code SCREEN50. So click the link in the description to take advantage of this offer. Back to the Easter eggs. Now, another sequence that we see several shots of is Peter surrounded by these power transmission towers fighting Electro. In fact, in this shot, we see Electro forming behind him, like maybe his essence is pure electricity and he's starting to form himself there, where the electricity is the strongest between these towers. He almost looks like Dr. Manhattan recreating his body from scratch. But remember, Electro died in Amazing Spider-Man 2, but he was basically pure energy, not the flesh and blood Max Dillon from the comics. He would have trouble controlling this energy form, but he has help, as we'll see later in the trailer. Now, the black and gold suit that Peter wears is a modified version of the invincible suit that he wore in the comics during the brilliant run by Dan Slott. Basically, in that comic, Peter was tired of people dying under his watch, and he declares that from now on, no one dies. And we see the same attitude reflected in this trailer later on, when he decides that he wants to save the lives of the villains, but a bit more on that in a second. Now, later, we see another shot of this black armor with a spell emanating around the wrist, almost like when Strange uses the Time Stone. I think that Strange created this armor for Spider-Man. It maybe has certain magic spells baked into it, kind of like when Tony made Peter's first armor in Homecoming. So Peter doesn't have to learn the intricacies of the spell and study for years like Strange did. Consider this suit just a magic machine that Strange has built for him that can contain the power of the villains and subdue them. Now, what's interesting here is that when Doc Ock attacks Peter, he pins him in a classic comic pose, but when he unmasks him, he says,
"You're not Peter Parker."
But wait 1 minute. If these villains came to this universe and then walked around augmenting their tech with nanotech from the MCU, then wouldn't they have seen all the news reports that this Peter is Spider-Man? Unless the spell did work. Most of the world did forget that Peter was Spider-Man, while certain people, like MJ and Ned, remembered his real identity. When Peter dodged this car, we see him use his Peter tingle, much like when Tobey Maguire dodged another car thrown by Doc Ock in this scene in Spider-Man 2. So then we see Doc Ock trapped in a Hannibal Lecter-like cell. Now, I'm going to assume that this is in Doc Strange's basement. He's enchanted these rooms to become cells for these villains from across the multiverse. But I'm actually more intrigued by the basement itself. Doctor Strange's basement looks like my Aunt Tabitha. There's old file boxes. Later we see a model in the background, like maybe Wong is into model train sets. This is kind of like Spider-Verse, where all the different heroes were collected into another basement belonging to Aunt May. Ned is holding a crossbow, which he could have just found lying around. Or this could be a major hint of a twist that I'll talk about a little later in the video. They ask his name.
Dr. Otto Octavius.
I really liked this moment, because it shows the difference between these universes. Sam Raimi embraced the goofier aspects of the Spider-Man comics,
We'll meet again, Spider-Man!
while the MCU has always been trying to make Peter's journey more grounded and rooted in the logic of this universe.
Hey, is this anybody's bike?
The kind of logic where people are always making fun of the silly names that they give themselves.
Doctor Strange.
Oh, you're using your made-up names. I'm Spider-Man then.
So, little detail I loved here, that when Doc Ock turns, the arms turn with him. But that also implies that the arms are now sentient again and helping to control him.
Rebuild.
Remember, Spider-Man 2 ends with Otto Octavius coming back to his senses and destroying the Tritanium fusion reactor. Something has happened here that has made his arms independent and evil once again. So it looks like a major action set piece of the movie takes place on the Statue of Liberty, but notice that she is being remodeled, with Captain America's shield being added to her torch hand. Now, I'm not sure if this is meant to be permanent or some kind of just temporary special tribute. The renovation banner on the side brags that she is now the heaviest Avenger. Now, it's interesting that in the aftermath of Endgame, when there are really no Avengers around, at least not officially, people are still looking for heroes. I mean, that's what allowed Mysterio to fool everyone, and maybe soon it will open up the door for a team of villains disguised as heroes, like the Thunderbolts or the Dark Avengers. Strange says,
There are others out there. We need to send them back. So, Scooby-Doo this crap.
and I'm going to assume he means be a band of plucky teens and catch several bad guys. But still,
Please, Scooby-Doo this crap.
he's acting like a real a-hole, right? I mean, these Mephisto theories are really starting to heat up. Another fight sequence we see a lot from is this one inside some corporate office building. So far, it looks like most of the fights are Peter tracking down the villains to different locations. If this is an office building, could this be the Oscorp of the MCU? Maybe Norman from the Raimiverse shows up here, and somehow this firm is associated with the nanotech that we see Octavius use. This is also the building scene where Peter jumps to catch a pumpkin bomb, which is reminiscent of this blast hitting Tobey Maguire at the end of Spider-Man 1. There's a Daily Bugle news truck here, and we see Electro's flashes of yellow lightning in a sandstorm, which might be caused by the Sandman. And then we see J. Jonah Jameson in the flesh, delighted that he's able to catch Spider-Man at the scene of so much destruction. Oh, and real quick, this is the fine fire dog on Ned's laptop, and these jars are a nod to your mom. And then Doc Ock lays a bombshell on us.
We're flying out into the darkness to fight ghosts.
They all die fighting Spider-Man.
Remember, all of these villains died in their universes. Except really Sandman, unless like this is him committing suicide at the end. So this movie puts Peter in a real moral quandary. Now it's his fault these villains are there. They're a threat to the universe, but he's not a killer. He became Spider-Man because he didn't prevent the death of an older father figure. And now here's all these other older men, kind of like Uncle Ben, that he's not allowed to save. It seems like the villains have all teamed up to not just get revenge on Spider-Man, but to avoid going back to their own universes and dying. In this shot, we see more of the bridge fight with Peter and Doc Ock pitting their extra arms against each other. Notice that Peter is next to these two pieces of jagged metal. This is probably moments after Doc Ock plunged his arms into this metal, just barely missing Peter. So back to Peter's moral quandary. This box is apparently the key to sending the villains back to their own universes. So he takes it from Strange to prevent their deaths. Now notice that outside, Strange has created two sling-ring portals to make Peter web sling onto himself. And then he uses his electrical whip that we first saw in his own movie to reel him in and then push his astral form out of his body. But here's the thing. Peter is using this box at the Statue of Liberty fight with Strange. So that fight might occur earlier in the movie. And this scene is after they've trapped some of the villains inside it, like maybe ghosts in a Ghostbusters trap. Or this cube is just a conduit that Strange will use to send them back. Later on, we see Peter falling through Strange's warp skyline while also holding this cube. I think this is him explaining the multiverse to Peter just after he tries to run away from the Sanctum. So after he separates Peter from his body, he takes him on an astral journey where these trains represent different universes. This, of course, is very similar to the vision that the Ancient One showed Strange in his own solo movie.
I'm sorry, kid.
Look, there has to be another way!
There isn't.
Now, I'm not surprised that Strange is willing to sacrifice the lives of these bad guys. He laid down a pretty firm ultimatum in Infinity War.
If it comes to saving you, or the kid, or the time stone, I will not hesitate to let either of you die.
Later, Strange says,
They're a danger to our universe.
Now, I don't think this is because they're dangerous as villains. I think that for some reason they upset the stability of this universe. Like they're bending the fabric of space-time because they're avoiding their own deaths. Now remember in What If, Strange Supreme learns that it was Rachel's fate to die. And when he undid that event, his universe ended. So imagine if Peter stopped all these villains from dying and the MCU universe was the nexus of that happening. Then a bunch of universes would get swallowed up in the destruction, including his own. Now we see Aunt May running. Doug, what do you think about that?
She's looking for your mom.
Good boy. Back to the Statue of Liberty fight, we see Electro in his comics-accurate yellow and green costume, complete with his spiky mask. This is probably a new suit built to contain his powers. And because his powers are dampened, the lightning is now yellow instead of blue. Again, this could be Norman Osborn and Doc Ock working together to build these new suits and technology, or it could be a mysterious new villain we see a bit later on. And then Willem Dafoe says to Peter,
You're struggling to have everything you want.
And this pretty much sums up Spider-Man, always having to choose between two lives, his own happiness or the safety of others. At several points in the battle, we see the still under construction shield of the Captain America statue, which of course falls. Typical Shield. And then we see this other goblin, someone on a glider with a more traditional goblin hood like Hobgoblin wears in the comics. So this could be Harry Osborn, either from the Raimi movies or from Amazing Spider-Man 2. And these shots with the moon behind him even look similar to the Harry in ASM 2. But let's just say this is a new villain from another universe. Like maybe when this rift opens at the end of the trailer, every Spider-Man villain pours out, truly making this the Avengers Endgame of Spider-Man movies. If that's the case, and this is the Hobgoblin, then this could be Peter's best friend Ned. who is kind of Hobgoblin in the comics before they retconned it. This is why I think Ned holding the crossbow could be foreshadowing. From the top of the Statue of Liberty, we see Strange duplicating the spell from earlier, except now these rings are cast outward. Earlier he was trying to contain them in one space. So I'm wondering maybe this actually isn't Strange casting this spell. Maybe this is Peter with the cube, releasing these multiversal forces outward because he doesn't want them contained. Then we get the money shot. Lizard, Sandman, Electro, all together on the scaffolding. Now it is interesting that Lizard is jumping at no one. This is one place where I think we might have had a spider hero get scrubbed out digitally. In fact, in one of the international trailers, you can actually see something invisible hitting Lizard in the face. Probably Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man because, after all, Lizard was the villain in his movie. The alleged leaked images of Andrew Garfield, if they're real, and we're not going to show them because we don't show leaked images here, showed him holding onto a railing that looks a lot like the scaffolding. So why the Statue of Liberty? Well, it's an ideal place to lure these villains and cast a spell. It's under renovation, so no one will be there, and it's isolated away from the city. And then MJ falls, cause every spider girlfriend has to fall, and we're not sure if Peter is going to catch her, calling back to Peter's failure to save Gwen in Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now I do think this is the moment when Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man will return and redeem himself by saving MJ. And the trailer's tag, Strange says,
"They're starting to come through, and I can't stop them."
Then we see these strange rifts in the sky, almost like crackling timelines that we see at the end of Loki. So who is he talking about? This could be an army of spider villains from the multiverse. And what were your thoughts on that, Doug?
Oh, I think Vulture's gonna be in it, and Mysterio's gonna be in it, and then Kingpin, all the Kingpins from the show and the movie, they're all gonna be in it. It's gonna be amazing.
Let me know if you agree with Doug down in the comments. Or maybe, just maybe, it could be an army of Venom symbiotes. In the Venom post-credits scene, he says that the symbiote hive mind stretches across universes, implying they exist in the multiverse. This would also explain why Venom recognized Spider-Man and wanted to kill him, because Topher Grace's Venom had already fought him in Spider-Man 3. Well, that's all the Easter eggs that we found, but if you found any, let us know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Arey.